Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Albert, and thank you for the time that you're spending today with us. What I'm going to do is I'm going to go through our system, which is basically a warehouse management system for Swiftcount. So I'm going to do I'm going to go through PowerPoint, and should the time permits, I'll show some other screens, but we don't have that much time. So I'm just going to go and try to explain what I have, and obviously we're happy to do customized demo to any of you. So just to tell you who we are and what Swiftcount is, my name is Albert, as I said, and the goal for our program is to just help you use a web and mobile device to help manage any aspect of your inventory movement. So anything that has to do with shipping, receiving, counting, bin tracking, printing labels, anything that really has to do with the day-to-day dirty operation of actually managing the inventory, moving it around, scanning it, that's what we do. So basically what Swiftcount is Swiftcount is a web and mobile platform, as I mentioned, and we focus on products, count, locations. So we do have a bin tracking module that's fully web-based and that works with Sage. Sales order, PO receiving. We do have a production module, and we have more stuff that I will cover briefly as the time permits. So let me just tell you a little bit first about the platform. Before I even jump there, just you may not have heard of Swiftcount before, but you may have heard of us. We're Barcode Apps. We've been working with Sage for about 10 years. We've been doing the BAASS Connect for the last 5 years. And the idea is that we wanted to have a platform that was a little more modern, easier to handle. We used to have a platform called BAASS, which basically was a system that also allowed you to manage your inventory with Sage 300. But we felt that it was time for a fresh look. So we basically recreated from scratch. And the way that it works is actually has a local database on the Sage instance, as well as a silent service that sends information. So although it's fully web-based, there is a component on the local, both inside of Sage and on the server, that just takes the information of the Sage, puts it onto a web platform so you can go through and perform some operations. So what I'm going to first do is I'm just going to show you some definition of what we do through the PowerPoint. And then again, if time permits, I'll actually go into the program and show you some of the intricacies and how it actually looks. The whole purpose of what we did was to be a little bit avant-garde, if we can use that word, in terms of the Sage 300 world, going to something a lot easier to use. Our focus is, we spent years developing it to make it as easy as possible to use, and yet it's very powerful. So it does a lot of things and it looks very simple to do, but what it does is actually not simple. It's easy to do, but not simple, because it actually goes into Sage and does everything that it needs to do, just does it all silently. So this is just a rough look of what the platform looks. And as I said before, I might, if I have time, I'll actually go right into it. But basically, there is a full responsive backend, which is web-based, that connects to Sage 300. It actually, contrary to a lot of other Sage programs, we can install it in about an hour, with minutes, let's say 59 minutes, so that's less than an hour. But yeah, it's a fairly simple install. It's a lot of little connection points, but it's not that complicated to do. And the whole idea is to give you full visibility of your inventory at all times, on your phone, on the web, or obviously on Sage. Then as things happen, we have the service that runs every minute. So anytime something happens in Sage, like an inventory receipt or a new sales order or a new purchase order, that will get reflected to Swiftcount within a minute. And that'll be visible both on the web and the portal. The portal is fully integrated to the mobile is fully integrated to the web, so that there's no need to sync or do anything. As long as you have internet, it'll actually work real time for everything. The only time where it doesn't work real time is if you're in an area where you don't have internet. The little green icon here is like a beacon that basically pings the internet nonstop. And if it loses internet, you don't stop working. You can continue working with it, but it'll actually allow you to then work offline. This will turn red so that you actually will know that you're offline. And when the connection resumes and when it comes back, this will turn back green, and it'll send all the information that you've gathered since the last send to the platform. So nothing gets lost even if you lose connectivity. That's important to, we get that question a lot actually. The three things that we try to promote when we talk about Swiftcount is mobility, obviously the ability to do everything on your mobile, visibility, the ability to see everything on your mobile, and simplicity, because we want it to be easy, especially for people that are on the road or in the warehouse or doing deliveries. It has to be simple, otherwise it gets harder to get used. It works on both Android and iOS device. And with an iOS device, like for example, this is an iPhone, you can use a Bluetooth scanner, you can use a device camera, or you can use a more robust, like for example, this is a Honeywell sleeve where you have an iOS device and it has at the top a 2D Bluetooth scanner that allows you for scanning purposes. But you can use any of your standard iOS, like an iPad mini, an iPhone, and pair any of those scanners. And these are just a few. There's probably hundreds now. They're fairly inexpensive now, and they're fairly easy to pair. This is another option. This is something a little more rugged. It's just, again, this is just a 2D scanner with a pistol grip. We do get that a lot, but it also works with the more expensive, more robust scanners like the Zebras and the Motorola. As long as they have an Android version, we no longer support Windows Mobile. So that's just a little bit on the hardware. And again, this we don't have to, we go through on a case-by-case basis, and we have a consultation before we do an onboarding, so you would be able to know and discuss with us what scanner works best for you. So the first area of the program is what we call product management. And from the product management, there is 3 operations that we do that are what we call product-related operations. So on the portal, you can see all the information related to the product. You can see your pictures if you upload them. Now, those won't come from Sage, but you can upload them individually. And you also have a full view of all the locations for that product. And by locations, I mean bin location, sorry. So what Sage calls location, we call warehouse location. What the bin locations or sub-locations, we call sub-locations or bin locations. So all the priorities of the items, such as their if they're lot numbered or serial numbers or manufacturers or non-physical, that will all come directly from Sage. Again, that's all automatic. The information all flows directly. Multiple UPC code, multiple UOM, everything you have in Sage, we also support. So all that information gets uploaded when we first connect, and then they get uploaded and updated every minute. So the information is always up to date. Whether it comes from Sage, it gets uploaded to Swiftcount, or if it's handled by Swiftcount, then you'll get pushed back in Sage. Like for example, when you receive a sales or a purchase order, then obviously that information will be received and that will flow back to Sage. But I'll get back to the purchase order in a few minutes. So from the product management, what I mean by the product related operations are things that you can do that will affect the inventory of the product without a sales order or a purchase order. For example, we have something called a quick in or out. A quick in or out is just a way to take a scanner and say, I'm receiving this item, I want to adjust the inventory, or I find something that I didn't have in my inventory. I'm able to scan it, assign a bin location to it, assign an actual physical warehouse location to it, enter a quantity. We can even tag it if we want to know why this item came into be. So that would be an item that's just we want to adjust. And then when you hit the plus and complete the process, that will go through and create an inventory adjustment in Sage. And one thing we do by design is we don't post anything that's going to affect your GL. So the inventory adjustment will be created and somebody will have to review and post it. Just like if we did a transfer or a receipt or a shipment. We always post it for you, but you have to go in and make sure that you post it so that the transaction gets completed within Sage, just for audit trail purposes. So a plus will actually allow you to receive inventory, a minus will allow you to remove inventory. So if something gets broken and you just want to remove it, you're able to create a quick inventory adjustment, and you can't see it very well probably here, but we have the ability to tag the adjustment as well. And the tag is just something that doesn't go back to Sage, but that stays in Swiftcount forever, where you can research it and analyze it and report on it. But basically a tag can be a custom tag that would allow you to tag anything that happens, like a movement, but also add a comment to the tag. So for example, a popular tag would be damage. And then you can add a comment to the tag so that anything that gets damaged, you can tag it as damage. You can create a movement out to take it out of inventory. So it'll create the inventory adjustment in Sage. But then you can go one step further, and on that tag, you can add a comment that will explain how it got damaged or who damaged it or what happened. I mean, if it's a food item, it fell on the floor and we can't sell it now because it fell on the floor. So this is a kind of information that you can recall through a tag. That information will get basically saved because everything we do in Swiftcount is actually a collection of movements. So whenever we do a transaction, whether it's an in or an out or a transfer or a receive or PO, it's a series of movements that get kept one record per movement in the database so that it gets easier to analyze later on. I'm going to speed up here because I'm probably spending too much time on things that for what I have later on. So again, from the portal, you can load items, you can review items very quickly, you can scan an item and see all the different bin locations, so it gives you full visibility. If you do any movement, it gets visible instantly, both on the portal and also on all the other users. So if you have trucks on the road and you wanted to transfer information from one to the other, you're able to do that. That will become visible instantly, not just for the user that did it, but for all the users. So that's what, when we talk about location management, we mean bin location. So the ability to be able to see multiple items, to see an item and all the location where it belongs to be able to take all the item from one location, move them to another location. So individual item or mass transfers, we do all that. And that can be done both from the mobile device and from the platform. And if the item is serialized or lot numbered, then obviously you would be able to select the serial or lot numbers. If needed, you can create locations on the fly. You can manage the bin locations. They can be imported in mass. And then when you do a quick adjustment, you can assign them. And again, everything you do gets instantly reflected. The bin locations, as I said before, do not get reflected in Sage, but they do get reflected on the platform, so you can see from one to the other everything that happens onto the platform. One thing that Swiftcount is very powerful for is it gives you the ability to create inventory counts. So inventory counts are actually, there's two ways to create an inventory count. Number one, you can generate the worksheet in Sage, and then we'll use that worksheet and work in Swiftcount to create the count. Or you can just take the you can just create a worksheet quickly in Swiftcount. You can create a count directly in Swiftcount, and that count can be counted with the mobile device. That is all completely done outside of Sage. At the last minute, once you post that count, we'll import it into Sage and we'll create the worksheet. All you'll have to do is post the variance in Sage. So a very simple process, very useful for cycle counts mostly. If you're doing a full count, you may want to create the worksheet in Sage, but if you don't want, you just wanted to adjust a dozen products or a few products, you can do a cycle count by going directly into Swiftcount, creating a count, counting it. You can even have that count become a recurring count where every specific days of the week you can count a range of product or categories of products or your A-type products, and that will allow you to just go through, create your count, import it, do the count using the mobile devices, and then once you import it into Sage, you'll be able to see that the count that you create in Sage will then create the worksheet, and all you have to do is post the variances in Sage. Again, we do not do anything with the GL, so the variance posting is what will post the GL. Sales shipping, same idea. Every sales order that gets created in Sage will get imported into Swiftcount, and the platform will be used. Some people use it as a dashboard where you can see a progress bar for all the items, or for all the orders as you're going through, and as you're scanning them, you'll be able to see the quantities. We have what's called a quick keyboard. I'm just going to talk about that in a second because it appears on all our screens. The quick keyboard is just a way to very easily enter a quantity. That combination of 4 buttons allows you to tap. For example, 6 would be 5 and 1, or 11 would be 5, 5 and 1. If you tap in the middle, it actually opens a full calculator, and I'm just going to illustrate that very quickly. So this is one of my mobile devices that I'm actually projecting. If I was to do a movement, this is how it would look, and toggling on the calculator would allow me to go between an actual keyboard and my 4 quick button. We also have a little cursor. We've spent a lot of time trying to make this as easy as possible and have focus group, and people, once they get used to that, it's a very simple process that just allows you to go through and enter quantities either on a count or on a, in this case here, that's a receiving. So the page is purple. If you're doing a movement, it's green. If you're doing a count, it's red. So the screens are repetitive and very familiar from one to the other. Obviously the functionality is different, but how you use them is similar. And then we change the color just to make it easier for you to identify where you are within the program. So here we're talking about sales orders. So the sales orders would flow automatically from Sage. It would show up in Swiftcount. Once they're in Swiftcount, you can load them on the mobile device by either clicking on the little plus and entering it. You can scan a barcode that will load them on the mobile device, or from the platform, you can actually push it to specific users. So if you wanted specific users to have access, you could just go through and say, this user will do this user will do that, and just make sure that you, the user will then get a notification. They'll be able to enter the item and either scan the item and enter a quantity, or they can go into what we call a fast mode, where they can just scan the item, and it'll automatically add one to the scan. When you pick the item, you also have the option to pick the location. By default, it's going to go to the bin location. That's your primary bin location. Usually that will inherit that from Sage. What Sage calls the picking sequence will inherit it as our default location, and we'll use it. But if you have the product in multiple locations, then you may want to select a different one. Once you complete the process, all you have to do is either from the platform or even from the mobile, you can hit process, and it'll actually complete the process. So what I'm trying to illustrate here is that I can do everything from the mobile. I can take my phone, I can scan an order, it'll come in, I can receive it, I can assign the serial and lot numbers, I can assign the bin location, and then I can hit process. This will complete the process and actually goes back into Sage, and automatically goes back into Sage, and it's going to create a packing slip that can then be automatically, that can be added to the package. So doing all this, we're actually working through Sage, but you don't have to open Sage. All this happens in the background. The packing slip can be sent to the packer, so you'll just print it and put it in the package, and this was all done directly from the mobile. It works really well as well if you have vehicles on the road that are delivering order, then they can do it directly from the mobile. You don't have to have Sage, obviously, on the mobile, on the truck. So just to recap what it says here, multi-user shipping, we can ship from different locations, not in serial. We can pre-assign the lots in serial. It uploads to Sage directly from the mobile, creating the shipment in the case of a sales order. We can have cross-device visibility, meaning that you can have multiple people shipping the same order, and everybody will see what other people are doing. And you can also change the status. That's not really relevant for Sage. The exact same thing happens from the PO point of view, where you can basically, every PO that you create in Sage will show up on the platform again automatically. You can go ahead and receive it either through what we call the quick scan, where you just scan the item, or select where you're receiving it, enter the quantity. We do support pictures, so you can see the pictures directly on the mobile if you wanted to make sure you're receiving the right item. And again, hitting process either from the platform or from the mobile device will give you the ability to just go through and push the transaction back into Sage. When it goes back into Sage, obviously in the receiving, it would create a receipt versus a shipment that gets created when we ship it. And the same thing happens as well. You have multiple people receiving the same order. You can have, you can specify the locations where you're receiving in and so on. Same functionality that we have on the sales order side. We have some additional functionality. I'm not going to really go too much into it, but things like curbside pickup, that's something that we do, where you basically can assign a pickup, and it'll actually send an order to a customer, and through a series of email and transaction with the mobile, we can have a touchless conversion where we're basically going to tell this customer that his order is ready. He's going to tell us where he is, what car is driving, and so on. We'll be able to complete the process. We have same thing for delivery trucks. We have functionality, more advanced functionality, such as wave picking. If you're doing multiple orders at once, you can attach pictures both to the shipments and to the products. We do production, we print labels, we have custom fields. There's a whole bunch of things that we do. One of the things that's very powerful, and I'm just going to illustrate that for just 1 second, is the ability to have what we call user control. So user control means you can actually assign specific things to specific users. So for example, this is one mobile where I'm logged in as an administrator, and I have access to all my locations and all my warehouses. So when I do a movement, for example, I can go through and receive something in a whole bunch of locations. But I can also have a different user. So I have another mobile here where this user is actually being assigned as a user, and he only has access to one location. So this user here, that's another device. So this user here only sees a few things, and he only has access to one of my warehouses, and he's only managing one of the sub warehouses. So that user will only see what he's assigned to. And when he goes to do a movement, that user will only be able to do a movement related to his own location. So this user is only belongs to this warehouse, so he can only use the warehouse that he's been assigned to. So this is actually very powerful if you wanted to be able to control what the users see. So if you have vans on the road, for example, are set up as warehouses, you can make sure that they only see what they have. They can only do counts for what they have, and they can only manage their own list of items. It works just as well in a restaurant, for example, where the users in the kitchen may not want to, you may not want them to see what's in the bar and so on. I mean, that may not be an example that works with Sage 300, but just to illustrate the point of how you can control what users see and do. And we do have a bridge to some other platform, like we have Shopify. We also have a bridge to Magento and to some other system that we can talk about. So this is basically the function I wanted to cover today. I'm going to just show you a few more slides, and then we're going to open it for question. I think we only have 4 minutes left, so I don't want to overstay my time. We do have an analytics module. One of the things I was mentioning at the beginning is that everything that we do is a movement. So because we're capturing all the movements, including the timestamp and the user and the type of movement, as well as the product and everything that was related to that actual movement, what that will give us the ability to do is that we're able to create a picture in time. We are able to say, okay, between that date and that date, we have a time filter. I want to see what happened to that product. And we'll be able to see every time that product was moved, whether it was received or shipped or transferred or an in or an out. So that gives us the ability to kind of recreate the life of an item between a specific period of time, so that if we have inventory issues, we're able to go and do it. But also, the movement allow us to have some more analytics. Like, for example, this is a screen that shows me all my order for a 7-day period. I can see the different days of the week and how busy they are. I can see my shippers, how many orders. I can see my top items. So there's a lot of information. And obviously, the more you use the platform, the more data that we gather. But the idea is that the way that it's built, with every movement being captured, gives us a lot of flexibility in terms of what we can do with the platform. I'm going to just open the floor for questions.
I do have quite a few questions that have already come in. And as a reminder, if you do have any questions, just type them within the question pane. The first question I have is, how many levels of approval does the system support?
So level of approval, basically, it's not really built based on level of approvals. It's built on permissions. So if you have the permission to do certain transactions, then you'll be able to do the transaction. In the example where I was showing, where I had 2 users logged into 2 different devices, the second user didn't have the permission to do anything other than in his own little world, meaning his specific location, and he could even receive or ship anything. So it's not based on the levels of approval, it's based on permissions.
Where is the platform hosted?
So everything is hosted on AWS, Amazon Web Services. So the servers that we have are encrypted servers. They're Linux servers, and the data for our customer is only accessible to our developer. And obviously, just for maintenance purposes, all passwords and all information is encrypted. And the information that we keep actually is just standard information that you would have on a price list. We have your item list, we have your products. And again, depending on the permission, you may or may not be able to see all these. So yeah, it's the AWS basically is the answer.
What are the minimum requirements?
So the minimum requirements is, because it's web hosted, it doesn't really matter. There is, in terms of devices, we just want to make sure that you have some of the newer devices. So for iOS, we support iOS 12 and newer. For Android, we support Android 8 and newer. And in terms of the actual platform, we support, because it's web-based, it doesn't really matter, any web browser, any newer web browser. Obviously, we don't support some of the older ones, but any newer web browser will work. And for Sage, we support Sage 2018 and newer. We keep, just like Sage, we keep the last 3 versions. So right now we're 18, 19, 20, and we're just launched 21.
Does it use a Sage license?
It does not use a Sage license. Everything happens outside of Sage. It will connect to Sage and use licenses for fractions of seconds at a time when it pushes and pull information, but it doesn't require a dedicated license. It can be any user.
What size of companies can use this platform?
So basically, we have customers anywhere from one user. I think our smallest customer has a cart, and they're not a Sage user. They use it independently, but it's actually very scalable. We have plans that allow users to have, based on the plan, that they have a lot more flexibility. So as I said, our small user is a one user. Our largest user is a company in Canada that has about they have, I think, 45 users on the platform. They're $1 billion company with 5 warehouses across Canada.
How long does it take to install and onboard?
The installation, as I said in one of my slides, is fairly simple. We can do it. It's just a matter of making sure that we have access to the servers and the various permissions and passwords, obviously. Usually the installation itself and the setup is done within an hour or two. And then the onboarding is done, currently because of the situation, most of the onboarding is done online. And usually we do a series of 3 to 4 Zoom meetings. Each one is 2 hour long, and that's usually sufficient. Everything gets recorded and posted on the website specifically for the customer so that they can always go back. But we do have a support team that's always available if there is additional onboarding necessary. And our costing actually is a flat fee. So if there is a bigger need for onboarding or for training, that's included in the original offer.
And then final question I have here is, can we add users at a later date?
Yes, basically the plan that we offer, the default plan has a 3-user system, but users can be added anytime. And it's just a question of going and assigning the user and the permissions related to that user.
Perfect. So it does look like that's all the questions that we have for this session. So I'd just like to thank you, Albert, for presenting today.
You're welcome. Thank you for the opportunity.